Hi there, this is Barb Pask in Ohio. I'm going to paint for you tonight. I've got this panel taped up here. Hopefully it will stay here. Let me show you what these are. I've been buying these off of Dick Blick, made by Speedball. It's a gessoed artboard. They are very, very slick and too slick in my opinion to paint on like they are. They're a hard panel, which I like painting on a panel. But the 8x10, they're like $1.40 on Dick Blick if you're willing to order them in quantity. I put a couple coats of gesso on them and I like them pretty good. I think I bought 10, excuse me if I say all the time, I catch myself doing that. I think I ordered 10 originally and I've gone through most of them. Once I got the second coat of gesso on them, I found that I liked them pretty good. So I just ordered like 30 more of the 8x10s and I don't know, a bunch of the 11x14s. They're really, I mean, shockingly inexpensive. So why not? I mean, even if it's just something for practice, for that price, you can't go wrong, right? Well, I've already got paint on myself and I haven't even started painting somehow. I'll show you what I'm going to paint. I'm going to paint from one of my photos that I took over in Clermont County, Ohio. I was torn between that one and another one. On the topic of painting from photos, if you're new to painting, I want to point out to you that you want to use your own reference photos. Once you're learning, it's not important. You know, if you're not interested in selling your work, then paint from whatever. Paint even from someone else's painting, you can learn that way. Paint from a calendar, but not to sell it. Even photos are copyrighted, and you never know where a painting might go. You want to work from your own images. I could be wrong on this. It's been a lot of years since I researched it, but I believe, at least it used to be this way, when an artist dies, the family retains the copyright for 70 years. Again, I would look into that before you hold me to it. I painted in the art museum several times, so you know, you can paint a long dead artist's work and you can sell it. I would, you know, present it as theirs, you know, sign it on the back that it's a copy of, but just be careful with that. You start off, you know, like I said, this may fall off of here. You start off painting from everything, and you know, I paint with a lot of artists and I see them work it sometimes from calendar photos because they're beautiful photos, but they're not your photos. So you got to be careful. People just don't understand that. I had someone on Facebook the other day tag me on it. It was someone's painting actually of some cardinals and something, and tagged me like I'd be interested in painting it. So you got to explain that to people. People don't understand that. Even photographs are copyrighted, and you can't just pull them up. And you know, there are places you can go to get images that you can use. Morgue Files is one. Just Google, you know, uncopyrighted photos. There are people that are happy to let you use their images or ask permission. Just be careful with that. Again, you never know. You might sell something and you never know where it might end up. So, all right, let me show you what I'm going to paint tonight. This is a farm scene over in Clermont County, Ohio. I'm going to crop it because so we're going to edit it and we're going to crop it. I would like it to the barn to be a little bit bigger. So, all right, let's see here. Pull it up a little bit, and to get the format closer to an 8x10, we're going to pull it in more like that. So I've still got the building in there, but it cuts it off some. I like this photo a lot because it has really nice light. See how the front of the barn is lit. All right. The one it was another one. I thought about doing this one, and I may sometime. I like the composition. This was over in Hocking Hills, Ohio. I like the hillside and the way the buildings run up the hill. Not as much light on it. See how the front and the side are pretty much lit the same? So I'd have to explain that when I painted it. I would have to darken one side or the other to explain that to the viewer. But that's kind of what we're looking at right there. Very pretty scene. We'll set that on our easel so we can get paint on it. Won't take me long. All right, and I'm going to put a tone on the canvas like I normally do. And I was going to say, if you like the idea of a tone, I mean, you can do it with acrylic, and then it can be dry when you work on it. One issue I run into with the tone is that I pick it up when I paint on top of it. So I'm probably going to kind of wipe the sky area out so I can keep my sky color cleaner. But sometimes it doesn't matter. But again, you can do acrylic first if you do oils, because you can do oil over acrylic and let it dry. Try different colors. It can be really fun, the effect. But you got to leave some of it showing through, or it doesn't really do you any good. But the nice thing is you don't have to feel like you have to cover every square millimeter on the canvas. I painted outside this weekend, all weekend, in a plein air competition. Ohio Plein Air Society came to Hamilton County, Ohio, and we checked in Thursday afternoon. I went out Thursday afternoon and painted into the dark. It was getting dark. I was painting the street scene, and I waited for the lights to come on. Got kind of magical then. It was really kind of cool. But that day the weather wasn't too bad. That was Thursday. Friday, I went out in the middle of the day, walking around. So I'm going to wipe out some of this for my sky to keep it cleaner. I walked all around in the sun, trying to figure out what to paint. Every angle of the places I wanted to paint was in the sun. So I finally got set up. By the time I got set up, I was pretty much already overheated. Painted a while. I do have it's called a Shade Buddy, an umbrella, plein air umbrella, which is wonderful. But if you're even under the umbrella, you know, and there wasn't any wind that day, it was really tough. So almost got overheated. I was sitting on the ground at one point, and I had the canvas maybe 3/4 covered, and I looked up at it and thought, that's just boring. You know, it wasn't exactly what I intended. I was trying to crop in more on a cafe with umbrellas. So I wiped it off. You know, you got to be willing to do that. And I started over, and I worked a while, and I just couldn't handle anymore. So I called it quits, and I went and got some dinner. Then I sat up where I was the first evening to try to work back on the street scene that I had started the night before. I actually, believe it or not, was trying to put in moving cars, because the street was in the foreground. It's just, you know, it's just almost impossible. And that was an 11 by 14. That's the painting I'd entered for competition. And I may go back on and develop the cars further now. You know, you have to do 95% of it on location for it to be plein air. So let's see, that was Friday. Saturday I went to a little town south of here and painted a train station, again in full sun with my umbrella, and the wind was blowing. At one point I'm hanging onto my umbrella and trying to paint with a palette knife, and oh wow. Then Sunday morning we had to turn in our wet paintings to be juried, and then we got to do a quick draw, which is fun. We each pay $10 and you have 2 hours to paint. And I did a little house near the location. And I actually did it in an hour because I could have kept going, but I felt like I didn't want to make it harder and harder and keep picking at it. But I didn't win anything, but it's always a good experience. Last year I did it, and I did win one of the boxes of painting panels, and I sold my little quick draw to the people's house I painted, so not as successful this year, but that's how it goes. Okay, what I'm going to do here, I don't know if you ever watched Helen Van Wyck, but I am going to sketch these in, but I'm going to think about, like she'll just say, okay, barn is here, barn back here, the other shed is here. She'll kind of just place things. And I think what that keeps you from doing is getting much, much larger than you want to be. Because I can tell you from experience that's easy to do. So in this general area is going to be my barn. That, of course, is going to be my focal point. So we'll just kind of sketch it on. There's your silo. And you just got to look at where things land in relation to other things. You know, where is that barn hitting that silo? How much space from the top down when you sketch? And you know, this is obviously, I could take a pencil and sketch it on, and you could do that very precisely. Get a T-square out, and you know, but I don't work that way. But you know, sometimes you have to partway through. And the way I'll figure out the depth of the building, there's a little vent there. Okay, then I look down, there's a line here where the red ends. Window, 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 window down here. So that's pretty much the height of the side of the building. And I'm looking, you can use your paintbrush to get the angle. If you're outside, keep your arm straight, hold it out there and get that angle, transfer it to your canvas. And like I said, one thing that's tricky is when you're painting like we are here, it can be tricky to get the exact width of like the front from here. So the way I'm doing it, I would do it if I was outside, is I would stick this out, I would look at the side, measure the side, compare it to the front. You can't see exactly what I'm doing, but it'd be the same thing. Like I might just see the side, and then you move it over to the front and decide how far across the front that goes. So in this case, it goes to about here. So that means that the front is to about there, which seems wider than I would have expected actually. So, but again, we just have to change it and change it till we get it right. So we'll do our best. And this, keep in mind, even though there's doors between, this angle here is going to run directly across. That's like if you do an ellipse and you can't see the back of the ellipse, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and pretend you can see it. You know, draw it in. Yeah, see this sliding down here, so this may not work. It'd eventually be sitting on the bottom here, won't it? They're just a little heavier, I think, than some panels I use. So it's all right, we'll work with it. And then, like a lot of barns, there's a hillside that comes up here. See, I'm going to move the camera down because the panel's going down, right? Actually, I'd rather not. I'm going to move you down this way. That's a little better angle. I think you can see some of the photo that way too. Again, I was saying there's a grassy hillside right here that comes up. So I pretty much moved all the way down, haven't I? Well, maybe it won't fall forward on us, right? Okay. That's pretty much the barn. And see what I've done? I've made it bigger than I intended. Now, does that matter to me or not? Because I wanted it more over in this area, remember? That's because I made the side bigger when I started. You know, because we got another building here and another thing here. I'm thinking, do I want to push it back? I mean, the barn is my focal point, and the drawing's not bad. But I did. I made it bigger than I intended to. I mean, I didn't know exactly. I just wanted it in that area, but I actually probably would have preferred it to stop right in that area. All right, we're going to let him go. We're going to wipe him off and push him back. I used to never do that in the beginning when I was learning to paint, because, you know, it's hard to draw and get proportions right, and I just, you know, I didn't want to let my drawing go. And I have learned over the years that if you have a bad composition, you have a bad painting. I don't care how well you paint it. Okay, so we're going to think about the width of this side before we're going to pull it in before I get any further, so I don't do it again, because I just might. So we'll have it more like that. Okay, now again, we decided when I hold my arm straight out and I look at the width of the front. Okay, width of the front. It's not much more than halfway, actually. So it's about there to there. So it ends about right there. This is a reason, again, for not doing real precise drawings. I know if you're a watercolorist, you have to. That's a very different way to work, and I really respect watercolorists. So this is where we want it to end, so we don't go past there. Okay, keeping that in mind, because it kind of angles up here, and my dormer comes out to here. Okay, now we're going to look how at the angle of this edge right here on this dormer. You know, not that I'll be adjusting it over and over, I'm quite sure. And your doors are here, and again, go ahead and draw that line across there, even though, you know, it doesn't run across there, so you can get that angle right. I can hardly see any of the roof on this side of the dormer, just a little bit. And we're pretty much to the side. Typically a building, you know, if you're looking at the front, it may run up that way just a little bit. As it runs away from you, it's going to run, you know, you got to follow, see where the vanishing point is. But this has got this hillside here, which is a little bit different. All right, let's see what else we got going here. Now, did I bring it back much? Did I bring it back enough? I brought it back a little bit. Still not probably as much as I could have. We're going to go with that, though, because how many times do you want to watch me redraw it, huh? All right, now we got another building back in here, a little dark building, which I don't want to draw your attention too much, but we might. I like that about farms. You just get all these buildings everywhere. They just keep sticking up buildings as they need them. And this is cute, this little silo thing. And there's a little building out in front here too. And this little silver guy over here. And I can move down, and then we got one more guy here that's going to run off the edge. We're pretty much straight to the side of him. I'm not real worried about him. Okay, and this runs up this way. Got some interesting shadows in it, doesn't it? And fencing. All right. Let's look at this little shed in the front here. He just catches the edge of this building. I guess that could be a spring house maybe, I don't know. But we got fencing, which is fun. Fencing coming across here. I like that the foreground has all these shadows in it. And then there's kind of a ditch line running across here with this kind of dead tree. We'll have to decide how we're going to handle that. All right, let's start with the barn. I always start with my focal point. I do think before I do that, I'm going to wipe a little bit of the color off the front, so I can get some cleaner color on there where the light's hitting it. Like I said, that's one disadvantage of toning is if you're working in oil paints, as you pick it up. And I have toned with acrylics before. I think I mentioned before, but I've used pink even, and that's really fun. Okay, one more thing I want to put in here is this tree line. Now, you got to be careful. That's one thing to point out to you. People have a tendency to do, in my opinion, is to follow the shape of things. You know, follow the barn with the trees, and in reality, it might do that. But do you want it to do that? And I don't want everything to quite line up here, so I'm looking at it here before I get started. I'm going to bring this building down. I mean, it's your painting, it's your reality. You decide what you want. If you have to move a tree, or you move a tree. I'm not good at making up stuff, though. I know that about myself. I like to have the information available to me when I paint from life or paint from a photo, or I'm just not one to make up stuff, really. Okay. That's our tree line up there. All right, I think that's enough information to get us going. I'm going to start with this big brush that I tone with, which is a Rosemary again. Rosemary and Company. Pretty good size. It's a number 8. Yeah, pretty good size. I'll show you what I'm painting with tonight. I recently bought a painting box for outside. It's called an Easy-L. Well, we'll see if I can show you or not without causing too much chaos. There it is. It's called an Easy-L, and I bought it from a friend, and I did have to purchase a tripod. You set it up on a tripod, and normally you wouldn't use it like this, but my paints were already in it, so. But mostly for plein air, lighter than my French easel. I just, got my really first good experience with it this weekend, and I like it a lot, so I think I'm going to be real happy with it. Trying to get you where you can kind of see both. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? All right, let's start with the front of that barn. And as far as color, it's an unusual color. A little bit yellow. So let's start out with a little bit of my Indian yellow and a little white. But yet that's too yellow. put a little transparent red oxide in it. That's closer. And maybe a little more white. Maybe one of these times I'll paint with the Easy L, and you can, because when I'm mixing, it sets right here, and I'm painting up here. Maybe you'd enjoy that, and you could see me mix color a little bit that way. All right, let's try this and see what we think. And it's really hard to judge till you get the canvas covered, in my opinion. You know, you almost have to do that, and then you can go back and make adjustments as you need to. And especially with, you know, whether it's a white canvas you're working with, or in my case it's a tone canvas, you know, either one, both affect the way you see the color. So all right, the door looks white, but I don't ever work with pure white. So we'll put white into this mixture and paint it in. We'll just go ahead and block the whole thing in right now. I try to work large to small detail, you know. And usually I would go around and put the darks in that I see first. I do that quite often. I don't do everything the same all the time. Maybe I should. Okay, and that angle should line up with that angle. We got to keep that in mind. And it does. Okay. Okay, the roof is, again, pretty white looking. It's a metal roof. Metal roofs are going to reflect the sky and catch the sky color. So I'm going to put a little blue. We'll take a little cobalt and we'll put white in that. And let's see how that looks. Like I said, when I painted on location the day I took these photos, and you just wouldn't believe how things just kept changing as the light shifted around, how the colors change, and it's a fun challenge to be outside, I'll tell you. And if I remember right, which is a little hard to see from the photo, that kind of angles out. And I can't see much of that roof past the dormer over here, up high anyway. And again, I'm an impressionistic painter, and I want it to be impressionistic. I don't want to pick it to death. Now the top part of the roof is a little bit darker. That's why the other day, after an hour, I had all the information there, and I just thought, I'm going to quit. You know, I think there's something into knowing when to quit too, and I just thought it's going to get fussier and tighter if I keep going, so I'm quitting. That looks too dark. I took a workshop, the last workshop I took, at the end, well, through email. You know, I went ahead and asked how I did. You want feedback, you know. And she was nice enough to respond and give me feedback. And one of the things she said was she felt that I knew when to quit. Some people, if you gave them 5 hours to paint, they would never stop painting. They would just pick it to death. And I had quit and was walking around the room to see what other people were doing. And you do have to know when to quit. This is quite the big brush for what we're doing here. I was trying to stay with it for a lot of it, though. I think I've mentioned before, but I've also done what they call quick studies before, where you do like 20-minute paintings and stuff. Like if I don't have anything else going on, it's kind of fun to do that. And this is obviously red, as is this, but this is a lot warmer, so you want to take note of that. I recently painted a big red metal building outside, and it was a big building, and the right side of it was much warmer, much cooler than the left. Even though it was one building, it was different sidings, catching the same light. It was all red, but that was something to notice and something to try to capture. Let me see if I can grab that painting and I'll show it to you. I just framed it today for a show that's coming up this weekend. But I was really trying to study the reds as I painted it and notice that about it. I'm not sure what you can tell, but the left side, see, is much warmer red than the right side. And that was something I was trying to pay attention to when I was mixing my colors. Something, again, something to notice. Otherwise, you might just paint it all the same. Okay, so we'll mix up a red for the front. And it needs to be, it's a little more orangey, has more yellow in it. And this is your story about what you're doing too. I mean, you do what you want with it. I mean, unless it's a commission and it has to be a certain way. I mean, I'm going to get lay this brush aside and get one that's a little bit smaller. Boy, it's just about impossible to get into some of those areas. Doesn't look very light, does it? Again, I know we're judging it against this, and I'll come back to it if I need to, but we'll get some color in there for now. Okay, and the side obviously is red on the top, so we'll do that. I'll take some Cad Red Light and some alizarin crimson to darken it. Let's see what that looks like. And we're going to put a little blue in there because it's on the shadowed side. Cool it off. Let's see what that looks like. And I'm trying to break it up a little bit. I don't want it all this one solid color. Try to get this angle right. Bit of warmer red in there. There's a little vent thing up there on the top too. We'll have to decide if we want it or if it matters. Clean that up a little bit. Okay, now we'll do the bottom, which is a darker version of the color that we put on the front here. So I'm going to take that same mixture and I'm going to put a little blue in it. Let's see what that does. And I'm not too worried about the windows at this point. There's a door down there, but we'll just get it blocked in for now. This looks way too blue to me, and it probably does to you too, but it's early. So let's move on. The silo, as you can see, it's got one nice, it's odd that it's catching all that light when the front is catching so much light, but somehow the light's getting over behind there. And the silo is metal. And again, metal things tend to reflect the sky, so I'm looking at blue here. I think we'll do the lighter part of it first. I'm going to try to put a little yellow in there. Kind of odd, isn't it, that it's catching all that light behind the building? But that's what I'm trying to do, is just be observant and paint what I see. And I can tell you from experience, it doesn't always work. Sometimes it just doesn't read right for whatever reason, and you have to change it because the viewer has to understand it. Back of this is quite a bit darker. Little ultramarine, little transparent red oxide. And we'll be adjusting the shape of everything. Just for now, we're just trying to get it blocked in. Darkest up there, not as dark as it goes down, so. And actually when it gets below that shadowed area, it's a little darker closer to the building, so. Like right back in here, it's a little darker. I don't know why, but for now, we're just trying to paint what we see. We just get it blocked in. And it's like anything that's round. Generally, so it turns away from you, I have found if you darken the edge, that helps. Like when I do, you know, a vase or anything that's a piece of fruit or anything that's turning away from you, I think it helps to darken the edge. And I think he feels a little fat, so we'll see. We may be cutting him down. All right, let's move on from there now. I want to make sure I don't cut this off right there. I might, you know, it might not be right, so we'll bring it down. Okay, we're gonna get some paint back in here too on that brown building. Again, that building's not important, and I don't really want your eye to, and we may, you know, in the end, we may take it out even. We'll see whether it's important to the scene. Cool it off because I want to pull it back. Things recede if they're cooler. We're just going to block it. We're just going to stick him in there for now. I don't really care about him. We'll see whether he's important or. But I'm going to bring him over enough that maybe this overlaps him. So. I'm looking at angles here. Well, he's back there. We'll decide whether we like him or not. All right. The little metal silo thing is pretty much like this little thing is pretty much about the same color as that. It's a little, it's catching reflected light too, because you can see it's lighter on this side where the sun is hitting it, and it's also lighter on the left side, and that's probably reflected light from the ground. So something to notice. And this actually might have been a good candidate to wipe off too. Let's see if it's too late to do that or not. See, See, that's pretty much set up already, which is nice to know too. You know, this tone I put on. See, I'm not picking any of it up already. And that's oil paint. Not a lot of it, of course. Okay. I've spent my life in Ohio, so to me, things like this are home. I'm sure it's not that way for everybody. I didn't grow up in an area where there were mountains and waterfalls, and those things are beautiful, but to me, this looks more like home. And we'll have to try to kind of, suggest these ridges later so it feels like it, what it is, of course. But we're not too worried about anything yet. Later on we start panicking when things aren't working. It's going to ask you to please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you so much. Also, I'll have a link below in the description box, link to my website if you want to check out more of my work. I'm messing around with this probably more than I need to. Move on, quit playing with it. All right, now we'll do this building over here, which is another brown building, but closer to us, obviously. This is in front of this guy. I pulled him down, so and I do want things to overlap, so let's pull him forward even. Like when you do still lifes, sometimes you try to, generally you do try to overlap things. Never say never, though, with painting. I mean, I believe there are rules that make things work and things that make a good composition. But I think you need to learn the rules. But I also think rules are made to be broken. We all hear that. Because I have seen people paint, like still lifes, for example, with an object here and here and here, all spread out, which I probably wouldn't do, but they were beautiful. And so there you go, Okay, we have a lot of green in this painting, so I'm going to get that big brush back and I'm going to just put a bunch of green on here for now. Again, I'm trying to get this covered, so get the green on and get the sky in, and then we can judge things better. So we've gone back to our number 8, our bigger brush. And I'm going to take some ultramarine and my Indian yellow, which I like, which that together makes a transparent green. Put a little bit of it's a very dark green, but if you spread it out, it is not. Get rid of this tape, huh? Because now it's just fighting us. Okay. We'll figure out some better way to do that, won't we? We're just going to put some of this on in this corner. I want this corner to stay darker. Okay. mix a little Cad Yellow Medium in there, and I'm going to put a little red in there too because I want to kill it. And you kill a color with the complement, which put a little red in the green and it kind of grays it down. One thing I've noticed new painters tend to do a lot is paint shockingly vibrant greens. You got to watch your greens. They're tricky, and people complain how hard they are to paint. And in the spring here in Ohio, we are, oh, are we green? We just glow. Darken it up back in there. Lots of shadows. One thing I didn't do we want it or not, is the little building in front. I'm going to go on without it for now and decide. I'm not sure. Okay, now we'll block in those trees. And I want to, because they're pushed back in the distance, I want to cool that green off. So I'm putting a little white in it now and some cobalt blue, and we'll see what that looks like. You know, nothing's a done deal. I warmed it up a little bit. I'm also going to put a little bit of water in that so it moves around for me. These are the water mixable oils that I use. I've used them, I think, for about 4 years. Like them a lot. They're oils. I say that every time. They work like oils and dry like oils, but they're water cleanup. And these are the Cobra, which I really like the Cobra brand. And they, you know, if you go to their site, I think there's some videos there, and they absolutely encourage you to put water in them. I just don't much. So it's a chance to get that angle correctly here as we're blocking in that background. Trying to stay back on the brush, and I don't have as much control, and that's what I want. I don't want to get too picky. That dormer comes up like that. So I may need to pull it up, but I painted around it. You know, and this might even be, we might want to pull some of this up and off the canvas, even though it's not that way in the picture. Ask me any questions you've got. I'm happy to help. Leave a link to your website. If you have one, I'll come check you out. Sorry that didn't work to tape that down. I guess these panels are just a little bit heavier than some that I've used. What else I laid out here too that I showed you in another video is this little thing. Catalyst by Princeton. It's a little rubber palette knife. I'll show you. It's fun to paint with it, and it's fun to paint right on the panel, right on the canvas. Actually, what I'm doing here is I'm going to put a little yellow, a little white, and we're going to, where we see the sun hitting some of these trees, we'll try this and see if we like it. I like it. I don't use it all the time. but I find that when I do, I mix on the canvas with it. Feels really cool to play with, I'll tell you that. You know, and you could even use it to sketch in your tree trunks, you know. There are people that scratch in to explain things. I see they do that in their paintings, so, you know, you could do that. Because we've got that orange behind there. I'm not saying we'll leave that, but so you could do that if you wanted, you know, kind of scratch in. Some people sign their names by scratching into their paintings. When it's wet, you can do that and get a pretty nice signature. So we'll see if we like that or not. Looks fun though, doesn't it? Like I say, I've done whole paintings with this thing before. Got a landscape I should show you that I did with it one time. It's fun to do the sky and the clouds and stuff with it. Okay, I'm kind of cleaning up that dormer a little bit. Maybe a little prematurely. So that tells me, because it needed to be up, that tells me that I need to adjust that red area that's up inside there too. Okay. Let's mix up some sky color, even though we got a lot more green to get on there. I know these videos aren't quick, and I apologize for that, but I kind of like doing them in one shot. You know, don't watch the whole thing at one time if it's too much. I buy DVDs. Gosh, I bought one here not too long ago. It is 6 hours long. Christine Langley. It's about making your paintings sparkle. But it's 6 hours. That's a commitment, you know. So you probably wouldn't watch it all at once. Let's get some color up here with this thing too. You know, it's even helpful for that, even if you don't paint with it, just to get the paint on the canvas. I do that with a palette knife too, same idea. But I'll show you when there aren't any clouds in the sky, but clouds are fun to do with this thing. Like, say you get that blue sky in there, put a little white on there. That's hard to see, but anyway, you can do a lot of soft things with it. It's just a fun tool. Doing a show this weekend at a high school. So that's on. We set up on Friday, and it's Saturday and Sunday. My wonderful husband helps me and carries my stuff around, and I have grids. They're 6 foot tall by 2 foot wide that I use. You can zip tie them together and I set up a 6 foot wide, where's my hand? 6 foot wide, and I book it on each end, and that holds it up. Works out really nice to hang paintings on, and then tables, of course. I set up a couple tables, and this show is not a big jury. Well, it is juried, but it's craftier than some I do. It's not a fine arts show. So I try to do smaller stuff too. I do these 4x4 inch paintings. I do frame them in custom frames, and the framer I like to use is Franken-Frame. I've not mentioned that before, I don't think. Franken. They're out of Tennessee. Wonderful people to deal with. If you go to their site, you can enter in the size frame you're looking for and scroll through, and it will tell you the prices. A lot of times I'll look at their clearance, things that are reduced. And when you're buying 4x4 frames, they're not very expensive typically. But they come, you wouldn't believe how well they pack things when they come to your door. I have never had an issue with anything. They are not moving. You also can buy, which I've not done, but I recommended them to a friend, and she buys, I think they call them Frankenbucks or something. You go ahead and buy kind of like a gift certificate, and you get more for your money that way. So that's something else to consider. But she was traveling and stopped down and met the people down there in Tennessee, and just was really impressed with how wonderful they treated her. But I've used them for years. Really, really nice. Frames can be so expensive. So we want these trees that are back here, we're going to want them to be soft and soft edges. See how that looks through there. Get our knife back in here a little bit. Wipe it off now. Play with my trees a little bit. Some very traditional painters would never mess around with something like this, but what difference does it make? Whatever, watercolorists, they have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. I used to paint with this phenomenal watercolorist. She's since passed away. She would use pieces of windshield wiper, that she would make her fence posts with and stuff. She had all kinds of things. She had a string she would use. She'd pull out and figure out her vanishing point. She taught workshops and taught this stuff to people. I think we're going to get in a few of these darks on this barn before I go any further. Got a lot of dirty brushes here. Okay, we're going to mix up something darker, not real dark. Try to explain some of this stuff. That's the side of that. There's a shadow here. And under here. This is actually 2 doors, so now windows, it's hard to tell what we're seeing because there's 3 on the side and one's right in the middle, so we'll do the middle one first. You know, and I could make these real square and real precise, but I don't know if I want to. We'll see. That's a doorway there. I don't know that that vent thing adds anything to the barn. We'll decide. Okay, let's kind of clean up the shape of this. And then there's a lighter edge, but I don't want it to be too light because it's not catching light up here that defines the shape of this. I could use a palette knife to do that. We'll see. This actually kind of curves out like that. Now, you know, I'm not sure what we want to explain on the silo. It has these little lines, but you know, I don't want to get too picky with detail. I want to be impressionistic, so that's me, maybe not you. Now one thing I've got to watch for here is I've kind of left a bit of this warm color showing around here, and some of it's fine. I like the warmth, but I just don't want like a halo of that warm color. So straighten that edge because that's important, I think. Verticals are always vertical. Something to keep in mind, no matter where they are, they need to be absolutely straight. Water is always level. It's self-leveling, so if you're painting water, let's mix up a lighter green where the sun's hitting. Again, this is that transparent green, and see when you, the more you spread it, more transparent it becomes. And we have to decide if we like this tree or if we'd rather just put in any kind of tree right there. Whether we want that dead tree or not. Always looking at shapes here, seeing if I like them. And paintings are funny. I mean, they talk about them, they always reach an ugly stage. I've heard people describe it as the teenage years. And they do. They, once in a while as I paint, it just all just works, and you know, you just feel good about it through the whole thing. Other times, frequently, you look at it and want to wipe it off. And sometimes I do wipe them off, but sometimes I keep pushing forward and end up liking them in the end. At this point, do I like this? I don't know. Trying not to think too much about it. See, I'm looking at the angle of that roof up there. I think it needs to come up. It absolutely has to come up to that dormer. So just adjust. I pull that up and then you adjust what's behind it. And let's mix up again some lighter green where it's all sunlit here. Pretty vibrant, isn't it? But again, you got to be careful and don't go too shockingly bright. We're going to use some lemon yellow this time and some cobalt blue. That's pretty vibrant, see? If you can tell or not. And I'm going to mix some white in it, which will cool it off and lighten it. And if I feel it's too bright, I can always put a little red in it. But let's see what it looks like. See, it's let's get some of it on here. Can't really see the base of this barn because of the dead tree. I got dappled light through there. You're getting glare on here. I don't know if you're seeing that like it is. Well, that's actually, I'm looking through the camera now, and your view is more, it's warmer. It's more yellow in the photo. Of course, I can make it any way I want, but back in here, it's running in front of that building. Still haven't made a decision on whether I want that little building or not, whether I think it would add anything to the painting or not. Trying to get some of this on here, and then we'll move it around with a brush. Probably blocking your view. Gotta figure out a better way to do these panels, don't we? The lighter ones stay taped up there fine, but these are just too heavy for that, I guess. And there's little things you can do to, create depth with the eye too. Put some light back in there. You don't always have to explain what people are seeing. See, we are picking up that color from underneath. I think we are. I mean, I feel like it was pretty dry though. I'm not sure. See, and I'm not going to want much detail on this barn, but you can see the rooftop, and this one's another metal roof. Just playing around. There's really not any paint on here right now. Just pushing things around. It's just a ditch line here, but it kind of creates a shape that I kind of like, so just going to push this around, get the canvas covered. Let's see if we can kind of balance it up here a little bit. It's a disadvantage to a panel, but wait a minute, I got an idea. Let me grab something. Thing fits in there. We can set the panel up on that. There, that's helpful. That way it's not hidden down in there, huh? See how clean and pure that is compared to there. So we may want to introduce more of that into there, because I've obviously intermixed it with the darker green that's on here, and but we may want some of that cleaner green. We've been at this an hour and 15 minutes. This is kind of nice to blend with and stuff, because I don't know how much I want to explain in this foreground anyway. One thing you can do with it if you want to is with this warm color being here, like with the tree trunks, you can create, kind of hard to show you, but you could, take it and cut into it and create, patterns of foliage if you wanted with it, It's become popular now for people that do portraits to leave. They do kind of a vignette. You probably noticed that, and leave a lot of the canvas unfinished, and that can look cool for this kind of thing too. Okay, let's see what we got up there on top. There's like a concrete pad that runs out of the door, which is pretty common, right? Kind of suggests that. See how that looks, I don't know. And actually, as I zoom in here, it's lighter right there. Surprisingly. Let's mix up some more of that nice green. Cobalt, and lemon yellow, white, some people do what they call a mud, like the orange color that I mixed up in the beginning. Some people will they'll make a mud and they intermix it into every color they mix. I've taken workshops where that's kind of how people work. They feel like it makes things more uniform. But you can kind of pull that up on that building, kind of create what looks like foliage. Now, I get paint everywhere. Let's think, do we want that tree in? It's going to come over top of our barn. Using this a lot more this time, aren't I? This is kind of fun. You don't have as much control with it, which is kind of cool if you want to be impressionistic. Kind of scored in the shape of that top of that little silo, the way it looks. No weather vane on this barn, is there? And I put a few little marks in there, in the top of that silo with my little rubber knife. It's actually a little white door here. It doesn't work. Now that we're further along, I'm kind of judging values better, and I've got more paint on the canvas. Straighten that edge. Now, put some of that bright green between these buildings so you can tell that there's some space between them. But this overlaps the silo, which is kind of nice. I'll mix up some of that kind of dark green again with the Indian yellow and the ultramarine. Kind of ground some of these things. And if our light is coming from here, you know, this probably would have a shadow. And some of this is in shadow. I don't like some of the stuff in this, like there's a perfect little round planter here. I don't care for that. Looking at the shape of that. And even though this is in the shadowed side, I'm sure the overhang would be creating a shadow up in there. Hard to tell again. And that probably overhangs this, so there should be a bit of a shadow there too. How are we looking? Let me see. See, I feel like the front should be lighter or the side should be darker. We're going to try darkening this and see first. I want the side, the front to pop, and let's just do this and we'll go back. We didn't really spend any time on those windows, so to speak. Let's try that. So that's darker, and the front does pop a little bit more. I'm going for a little bit more yet. I took that color I had, I put yellow and white in it. I mean, the sun is hitting it, and that's kind of fun, don't you think? And the roof up there, again in our picture, looks pretty white, and it still looks more blue, so let's change that. And that up there is darker. Oops. Let's try our fat little knife to define the angle of that barn. You know, I actually have a little tiny version of this, a much smaller version, but let's just try this. No, see, it flexes. It's a little hard to control. Yeah, see, it bends. Good for some things and not for others. I'm trying to get this nice angle. It goes up and down. And actually, it almost looks like it does. It curves out a little bit. So let's match it up on this side. And it curves out a little bit. Let's put those windows back in, such as they are, if you want to call them windows. One in the middle. Way too big. They're just little square things. And I don't know, you know, that I want them to be perfect little squares. And then down here there's one, and here there's one, you know. Let's get a little bit darker edge on this silo so it reads a little better maybe. Turns away. Something that might be fun is to get a little bit of reflected color from the barn into this thing, a little pink color. I like that idea. Don't know that I see it, but I like it. Okay, I'm adjusting the shapes of some things. This Now we've got some windows in the front. Way down here is a couple. And this curves out there, and I like that. Some things are more important, I think, than others. I like that about it. Let's get that on the other side too. Kind of flips out there a little bit. It's kind of cute, isn't it? Okay. And the door. Way too bright for that side. There's no way it'd be that bright. That's our shadow side. Okay, let's think about that tree now, that crazy tree. Can you see it? I don't like all that scruffy stuff at the bottom. You know, it's a dead tree. I do, however, kind of like this shape. So I think what we'll do is just kind of put in a tree. But not all that scruffy stuff at the bottom. Let's go back to our little rubber knife again. See if we like that. Just, you know, just to kind of scrape it in. See, it comes right up here in front of the barn. Okay? It kind of does a bend like that. And another branch coming like that. It's actually got a whole bunch of little, and obviously it's going to be thicker at the bottom like all trees are. Did a ball jar. I do a lot of ball jars, but I did another one yesterday, and well, I painted one on here, remember, a while back, but a lot of times I don't do the lettering on them. But I did one yesterday and followed through and did the lettering, and the first thing I did was take the end of a paintbrush and I scratched the word ball in there, and That kind of helped, you know. Then I proceeded to paint it in with the darks and the lights that I saw. Okay, I'm going to put some paint on that now. We'll get it darker. It can always leave if we don't like it, though. I've said it before, but that's why you don't make things too precious, so you got to be willing to wipe them out. This is quite the fat brush. I'll tell you, I've forgotten that I have a new brush. Let me think where it is. It's called a Sword, which I have barely used. Let me see if I can get to it. Excuse the noise. The brush is also by Rosemary, and it was recommended a video that I bought, Charlie Hunter, excellent painter. This is one of the brushes he recommended, and I bought it after I bought his DVD, and I just haven't had the opportunity to use it much yet. I'll show it to you. It's called a Sword again, and this is what it looks like. He uses it for trees because he said you just can't control it as much, so you just can't get as picky with your trees. So this is the place to try it, don't you think? I haven't used it yet. You know, not like a liner brush. He does some fabulous work, Charlie Hunter. You can tell he's got an illustrative background. I mean, his drawing skills are just phenomenal. Does a lot of monochromatic paintings. They almost look sepia. See, as you use it, it's opening up and spreading out, which is good, you know. New toy, right? Another brush they make that's kind of cool is an Egbert. It's a long brush that people use for hair and stuff sometimes. Yeah, it's too skinny through there. Thicken that up. And I think I'll go back, you know, where I kind of suggested these tree trunks back here, and we'll put some tree trunks in with this. It might be too dark. I don't know whether we like them or not. That one obviously hit the roof. And some scruffy stuff down there by the bottom. Let's try it for some of this stuff. Ew, I don't know how we feel about that, you know, because I was using a really dark color too, so. I still feel like it's a little hard edged, but maybe that's because I blocked it in before I got this out. Break this up. I'm seeing some things. If that is the overhang there, this would have to be up further. And should be a shadow from that building. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's get that back on our little board here. Okay. Let me smooth some of this out. Not to have, hard edges where they shouldn't be. This probably got a little busy down here once I got in there with that brush, didn't it? Not sure I like it as much as I did before, actually, when I was just scratching into it. Okay, let's look around here. Loving this little thing for some reason. Maybe it's the shape of it or something. That tree's catching some light. It's been an hour and a half. We've been using this a lot today anyway. Let's just use it some more. I'm going to scratch in. Let's see if we like it. I don't know. Some fence. We got random fence post over here. This has got too fat, so we'll cut into it. And fence has shadow under it, so let's get a little shadow under it.